Hi there, welcome to the Dylan Rounds case. Whilst recently we covered the breaking news of the burial site location, today I want to look at the motives behind Brenner and why he did what he did, as in a recent news article and Candice Cooley herself being interviewed, she supposedly knows the main reason as to why Brenner snapped and why Brenner murdered Dylan on the day of the 28th of May 2022. And we can look at a new article and as well the video itself, combine them together one after the other and then begin analysing. I'm going to read to you the information today because there might be some other bits and pieces we've not heard of before. I'm also going to just take a look to see if there's any contradictions or not. There's no harm in doing that. Some people may still be skeptical of Candice Cooley these days and from the past, but as we move ahead, we try and maintain and establish that consistency which may have been lacking way back at the start of the investigation of Dylan Rounds. That's why I'm here to pick up the pieces, pick up on little details, compare, contrast, etc. And what I can also do today is we can take a look back at my deeper psychological analysis of James Brener when I think it might have been a year ago or so when I made the video, or at least 6 months in between, where I did a checklist of factors which could have led to the trigger, the cause of Brenner's behaviour and actions at the time. Okay, that's what we can take a look at today. As well, I want to look back at the comments of the last video that I did, catch up there, see if there was any questions or any additional points. If anyone is watching who's interested in the latest ongoing breaking news, be sure to check my Dylan Rounds playlist out, closing in on nearly 500 videos made on the case. If you click top right corner of the screen where the I symbol is, you'll be able to find the playlist there so you can catch up on the new information, developing news, breaking news, etc. And as well, top right corner of the screen, click on the I symbol and you'll be able to find and catch up on the video I did last night, which was very important and interesting, which was me revealing to you the location of Dylan's burial site, where the killer James Brener buried Dylan Rounds originally, and where Dylan Rounds was found later, April 9th, 2024. Be sure to catch up on that if you haven't already. It's a very interesting video. And as I said, we can always revisit that theme, that concept with the usage of maps. The polls are in more so agreement to see future videos like that, so I'll take that into consideration. But today I just want to look at the latest news articles and just take it into mind. Welcome to those who are currently watching in this live premiere. Appreciate that. Share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat box on the right hand side of the screen. Shout out to the people as of yesterday and recently for their support on this channel, on here or elsewhere. It's very good of people to do that. If anyone wants to leave comments down below, questions, thoughts, reactions, you want to elaborate on any points, feel free to do so. You'll also find a pinned comment below this video, which has some additional links if you wish to check them out. If you want to support this channel in one way or another, there are ways to do so, such as the comments section pinned by me. So, with that all being said and done, without further ado, let's just catch up on the comments very quickly from the last video, and then we can proceed onwards with the news article. I will just quickly adjust it to the latest, and we can start from the bottom. I saw a new comment pop up. Take in mind, at this moment in time of me recording this video, new comments may show later, but not in this video, and that's because I recorded it before people added their comments in, okay? So, response here from Chrissy, great map time, thanks, you're welcome, appreciate what you say, good individual. Then we've got a person called Catherine. You're right, a lot of people talked a good game, and only a few truly are reliable, you Warlight Raf being one. Even some of them haven't even acknowledged he's been found. It's sad. Glad I found you through this tragedy. Thanks, stay safe and blessed. So welcome to the channel, Catherine. So it's good to see there are other people out there, viewers, new or old, recent, people coming into the case for the first time, whoever, that can see it for themselves, that there are a lot of people within the true crime community and the Dylan Rouse community that talk a lot, but they don't always act on it, or they're not exactly reliable. And I've seen it for myself, but it's good that viewers have seen it too. And it's good what Catherine says here, so that's appreciated. Weird comment. Beatrice, very good and logical point of view. Appreciate that. So I guess that's taken in consideration the story concept, the theory, the outcomes, the ins and outs of it, the possibilities when I was applying it to the burial site location, such as on the 28th when Dylan Rouse was murdered. Got Glenn Webster there, of course. Then this guy called Carl saying, "Hey Warlight Ref, good job on the Dylan Rouse video yesterday, connecting most of all the dots and trying everything together. Hopefully the autopsy report will be released soon and the exact location of the shallow grave." So I appreciate that, Carl. Just as a heads up, as for the autopsy report, yeah, it's not been revealed publicly yet in that sense, if we're talking about actual documents and papers. I don't even know if that would be released, to be honest. But in one way or another, the autopsy report was technically explained within that court appearance with Brenner on May 15th, when they said, when checking Dylan Round's skull, there was multiple shots to Dylan's skull. So they were able to determine and confirm Dylan Rounds was shot multiple times. There was no more details after that regarding if Dylan Rounds was hurt or injured anymore, or further damage to his body sustained. None of that was mentioned. So likely shot twice at least, that was it. But obviously done with an intent to kill, especially being shot twice. As for you saying hopefully the true location of the shallow grave will be revealed, well, I don't know if you watched my video yesterday, Carl, but I basically pointed it out, the location, and gave the rough coordinates, because it was based on other people that have been there themselves, seen it with their own eyes. Individuals that have never caused me trouble, or really the case any trouble, so it's good to see. If you're suggesting maybe additional material to reinforce it, well, with time that's possible. Just in general, so people are aware, a bit of patience, things will come. Just a bit of patience for now. Skeptical, I missed the premiere. I'll watch on catch up, can't wait. Hopefully you found the video interesting. Feel free to let me know your thoughts, whether it be in the comment section here or of my new video. We got Katie, hey, new subscriber from Liverpool. Welcome. Can I do a Liverpool accent? I can. I don't know if people will think it's a good one or it's a bad one. Actually, I'm not even going to do it, to be honest. I could possibly. We got Katie, hey, new subscriber from Liverpool. There we go, that'll do it. That'll do. When I normally do accents, I tend to do accents from other countries, but I can do a few from the UK. I just don't do them that often. We got Clear there. I'm not surprised, Warlight Raf. Okay, so you're welcome. Chrissy here says, in my opinion, Warlight Raf, you've done the best maps. Your hard research work is incredible. I don't know how you've not got a lot of subscribers. You're the most truthful channel when it comes to Kenny Veach and Dylan Rounds. Basically, all that you do is authentic. Blessings and greetings from Australia. So that's good to see. Appreciate that, Chrissy, what you say. Kind words. I guess when it does come to the maps, just my opinion at least, the reason why I could be considered the best at it is because I was really the only person utilising it from the start, the beginning. Whilst other people were doing other things digitally online, and then the remainder, those boots on ground, were doing it in real life with drone footage too, I kind of, was in the middle of it. Okay, the online part, but still using some form of imagery and doing the best I can with it. And I think it just all boils down to the fact I do have some experience with the usage of Google Earth, Google Maps, etc., Google Earth Pro comparisons, hike routes, mapping it out, beacons, markers, eagle eye vision, because when it came to the Kenny Veach case before Dylan Round's case occurred, I did the same thing there, just a different desert, different terrain. It was still a desert, but just different location because it was in Nevada. This Dylan Rounds was loose in Utah. But with having experience from the past, I could apply it to this case well. So it's good how things can overlap and cross over. You can incorporate key methods and strategies elsewhere in a simple missing person mystery or a true crime related missing person case. That's good to see. As for the subscribers, do I anticipate more subscribers on my channel? Not so much. I've seen a couple of people come along the way that say I deserve 1 million or 100,000 subscribers. The way I see it, at the end of the day, it is harder to get subscribers than views at times. I think they were saying for every 1,000 views, you should get close to 100 likes. That's the standard ratio. And there'll be a certain ratio for so many views equates to so many subscribers gained. Not always guaranteed. At the end of the day, views are most important because that's the count of how many people have actually watched the video. So when you're spreading awareness, you want people to learn about stuff, educational, important, serious news, or simple, light-hearted entertainment. You want people to come along. Well, the view count will highlight whether it's worked or not, such as with the spreading of awareness. When it comes to the subscriber count, you might have 10,000 subscribers, you might have 1 million subscribers, but how many people return back as for viewers? Not many. So I don't focus with the subscriber count as much nowadays because I might have 10,000 subscribers, but I don't have 10,000 views, which is kind of disappointing, but it's not just me, it's with most YouTube channels out there. People come, people go, and people forget. It's unfortunate. But as long as regular viewers are still able to find my channel and the videos without me being censored by YouTube, that's pretty important, right? And then hopefully people pick up on the breaking news along the way. I know some people have been unsubscribed because YouTube's done it. Weird stuff going on in the background. I mean, even when people are subscribed, if it comes down to notifications, even that isn't stable, is it? Because that kind of glitches out at times. At least for me, when it comes to channels out there on YouTube, I tend not to be subscribed to that many at all, maybe 5 or 6, because with my memory, I do remember to return back to channels to check in and see what's happened. And I'm not talking about true crime, I'm talking about completely other stuff, sports related, football, entertainment, etc. We got Carl, oops, sorry, Don Hatley's property. I don't know what you're on about there. This one, Papa, wait, they don't love you like I love you. Maps. Okay. Smooth fishing. I figured Dylan Rounds would be found sort of close to the grain shed property because Brenner was too lazy to go too far. Fair point, yeah. I guess the specific location is, well, I don't know if you'd say it's odd, because it's on the outer side of the grain shed property land, because it's on the other side of the fence, near to the gate. Is that too close to the main dirt road or one of the dirt roads? Pretty much. You thought it could have been a bit more remote. I think how it was described in the news article, in a remote area of Lucin, Utah, I mean, the whole area could be classified as remote, but if it is near to some property or parcels of land, if it is near to the odd trailer, or it's not that far away, I wouldn't say it's exactly remote. I'd argue and say it was further east or somewhat further south in certain areas, that could be considered more remote and out of the way from main roads, dirt roads, tracks, and stuff like that. We can always look back at it. We got a person here called, was that Louisiana? Is that what they're called, Louise? When you're an animal, only the beast understands. Is that the reference to the devil? Maybe. Skeptical. Wonder what happened to Dylan Round's wallet. Was he buried with it, or did Brenner keep it like the boots, phone and gun, key fob? Did he maybe dispose of it during the spring cleaning? Do you think Brenner did drive Dylan's truck with the seat being moved up and put in 4-wheel drive? Is that what Brenner was doing for the 30 minutes at Dylan's farm? Well, let's just go through that bit by bit. As for Dylan Round's wallet, there was no transactions, there was no activity after that point. There was never any mention about Dylan Round's wallet being found previously, and even up to now, not been mentioned. Candice Cooley did say that if the wallet was found, it would be deemed as discovery evidence, meaning it would be revealed to the general public. Well, that hasn't come out yet, nor did it in the past, so maybe it's still missing, unless it was on Dylan at the time of that burial site. But still, no mention of it in the court appearance with Brenner. Could it come up in the sentencing? I don't know. Surely it should have come up by now, but it hasn't. So maybe there is a small chance that Dylan's wallet was disposed of elsewhere, maybe as part of the spring cleaning. I mean, for example, if Dylan Rounds is up close with Brenner and there is a bit of a tussle, if they do roll or fall over, whatever, could Dylan's wallet possibly fall out of his pocket or wherever it's attached? Could it fall out? And then later, whether it be on the day of spring cleaning or before, Brenner comes across it and it is trying to stash it away somewhere. I mean, as well, when it comes to Dylan Round's wallet, it was said by Candice Cooley that Dylan wouldn't have much money on him at all when it comes to his wallet. I don't know how true it was. Something like $140 he would have with him once a month, or that's how much he would draw out. I think it was something along that line. That most of the money Dylan Rounds had was such as in checks, and it was like paid in and then it was in his bank. And when we look back at the Dylan Rounds case and his wallet not being found, nor his card, there was no transactions made. So Brenner wasn't in it for that part, such as the money. As for the card, there was no incentive for Brenner to use that card, probably because he feels like he'd be traced or tracked, possibly because of bank activity in certain locations. Maybe there was a small chance there was a few dollar bills, or however you call the currency over there, in Dylan's wallet at the time. And if not, maybe Brenner just thought, you know what, this wallet is pointless to me. There is no gain from it. There is no money. There is no value. I'll chuck it away. I'll dispose of it. Originally, I just thought that maybe Dylan Rounds, where he was buried, his wallet was buried with him because it was still on him at the time. But if you think about it, if Brenner did take the gun off Dylan immediately or shortly afterwards, and if Brenner got the key fob off Dylan, you know, Brenner rummaging around, searching Dylan's pockets maybe, coming across the wallet, taking it away, it would make sense. Because you think of many crimes out there, whether it resorts to murder, theft, robbery or burglary, it involves rummaging about, sometimes held at gunpoint, knife point. Give us the money. Where's your wallet? Where's your phone? Some, the criminals, do it themselves, put their hands in the victim's pockets and pull it out. So even in a killing as well, neutralize the individual, put them down, and then take what you want from them with little resistance. So maybe that's what Brenner did to Dylan. Not the primary reason to kill Dylan, but once Dylan's put down, then Brenner thinking, what can I take from Dylan, as an example. So there are possibilities there, like what Skeptical mentions. The talk about, do I think Brenner drove Dylan's pickup truck, the red one, when disposing of Dylan, with the seat being moved up and put in 4-wheel drive? Maybe. Dylan Rounds knew that 4-wheel drive was broken, but maybe Brenner didn't because he's not informed about everything Dylan Rounds gets up to or what works, what doesn't. Same with, Dylan's vehicle supposedly normally being unlocked. Well, maybe Brenner never knew that. So when Brenner was finished with Dylan's truck, he thought, well, I best lock it just so it doesn't look suspicious. But unknown to him, he made it look more suspicious. And as well, with the seat being adjusted, that was a little bit reckless. Take in mind that Brenner is shorter in height than Dylan Rounds, I believe. What was it, 5'5", 5'6", or was it less? It could be roaming around that area. So it would mean adjusting the seat closer to the wheel so you can actually reach it, etc. So that could match with Brenner there, of course. Will we get any further evidence about that type of stuff, this story? We would probably have to hear it from Brenner himself. And is he willing to explain? Not too sure there. Anything else here? Skeptical And is that what Brenner was doing regarding the truck when it came to the 30 minutes spent at Dylan's farm? Possibly, because if Brenner's already in possession of Dylan's key fob, keys, gun, why not take a trip down to Dylan's farm? It's not like Dylan can really do anything. Brenner's got the access to get into the trailer or the truck and see what's there for him. Was Brenner able to capitalise off much? Probably not really. But we've known in the past that Brenner has possibly broken entry to places and stolen the odd things. Is it any different with the Dylan Rouse situation? Not really. We can always go back to it later if needed. Ooh, long comment. Might just need to get some water for this one, Skeptical. Give me a second. What do you have here? 7 hours ago. So Skeptical's catching up with the videos recently, I see. That's good to see. So, Skeptical says, Raf, will you give your views and opinions on the close proximity Dylan was to the grain shed and the attempts made by Heavy D, Equisearch and other searchers using technology and cadaver dogs as outlined below in a Fox 13 Salt Lake City news report from October 6, 2022? Will you give your views and opinions? So have you quoted from an article or something? Right, I'll take a look at that. Let's just see. I mean, when it comes to the technology and Equisearch and Heavy D, that was when Equisearch money was raised for that full spectral drone. That drone was then handed over to Heavy D and the crew who could pilot and operate it, who then assisted with Candice Cooley in the meantime whilst Texas Equisearch were elsewhere, and then photos were sent from Heavy D and their crew sent down to Texas Equisearch to do that analysis of the full spectral drone photos and footage. And we never got an update. Justin Rounds was kind of hinting, talking around it, but no update was ever given. You remember that on the Facebook page? Is that mentioned down here? Well, we'll find out if I'm in line with what Skeptical has posted here, saying, quotes, television stars, the Diesel brothers, also YouTubers as well, flew their helicopter to Lucin on Thursday to assist Dylan's family with a drone they acquired from Texas Equisearch, a missing persons organization based out of the Midwest. Right, so this is exactly what I was thinking, already locked on. I do remember this. I do remember seeing the footage when they showed clips of them hanging out there. Heavy D, was it Diesel Dave? I can't remember, each person's name, but the two guys with the beards going down there, helping with the family, using the drone because they can pilot it, just going all over the area and taking photos as well. Now, as for the drone, supposedly money was raised from Duty Ron's channel, and then that was used to buy a full spectral drone, which was then handed over to Texas Equisearch. Heavy D in his footage, or the news article, was talking about how the full spectral drone in the past was previously out of reach by the general public. It was almost like military spec, military graded equipment, but eventually it was released to the general public, but it was very costly. Anyway, let's continue reading. The Diesel brothers have also agreed to match the family's $100,000 reward to find Dylan as well. Now, obviously, as we know, Dylan has been found by now, but back then money was used as a form of a bargaining chip, an incentive to get people to talk. It never was successful, and eventually that money that was put out there by Dylan Rounds' family, Justin Rounds more so, the $100,000, and then Heavy D, the Diesel brothers, put in, matching that with another $100,000 to create $200,000. That reward money was taken off the table, kind of later on within the case. It was taken away because it wasn't doing much good. It had no purpose, value. It didn't lead to any answers or developments. No one was willing to talk, okay? Or because no one else could talk or knew what to say or had much to say, right? So money was withdrawn. Diesel brothers got their $100,000, and then the family withdrew the other original $100,000, okay? The drone was equipped with a special lens that will take pictures to be sent back to Equisearch, as we know, to be analysed. Yet we never got an update regarding that, publicly speaking, which was unusual. In quotes, If Dylan was killed and if his body was buried out there, this has the ability to pick up on soil disturbances and anything that a cadaver could penetrate in the ground around it, said Dave Sparks, also known as Heavy D. In fact, this technology is so potent that the federal government banned it for a while. There had to be a court ruling basically saying, no, this is helpful, this is good, go use it. Okay. Well, I think what we need to do is possibly get a screenshot of this because, to be honest, skeptical, what's mentioned here, you could definitely throw it back and say, well, if that drone is so damn good, then how the hell could it miss this burial site location since it wasn't that far away? So I could give my thoughts now, or some of my thoughts. Maybe it's best to elaborate on it in a separate video, skeptical. Let's just finish off reading this comment. The Rounds family and the Diesel brothers searched the land surrounding the property where Dylan's truck and bloody boots were found. The Rounds family and the Diesel brothers searched the land surrounding the property where Dylan's truck and bloody boots were found. Yeah, I'm just double checking how it's worded there. That does check out. Not Dylan's property, the grain shed property, but the grain shed property where Dylan's grain truck was parked in the shed and where Dylan's where Dylan Round's boots, which had Dylan's blood on, were found near the dirt mound. This is our ground zero. Right here is where it started. So from there, we'll work our way out with the technology and see if we can find something, said Candice Cooley, Dylan's mom. Or not, I just find it interesting that all of these attempts failed, also that animal predators didn't discover the shallow grave and dig it up themselves. So that final little paragraph there is by Skeptical herself, saying how it's a surprise they didn't find what they were trying to look for originally because they had the equipment to do so. Yeah, so Skeptical, I'll give you my thoughts more so in a separate video. It's quite needed. Now, June says, I was just going to say, all that hype and nothing. Well, I wouldn't call it hype. No one was like jumping up and down or clapping, but I can understand, praising the technology and what it's capable of, yet it fell short. The only defence that you could say is they're talking about the grain shed property, the land, as being ground zero and checking that area out. The burial site of Dylan Rounds occurred on the other side of the fence line outside of the grain shed property, land. So if people are focusing in on the land, which is on the grain shed property in that area, on the inside of the, the border fence line, all that work will be done there. But what about just on the other side? It depends how far away they went or how close they got to the edge of the boundary line, the fence line of the property. That's the only, I don't know if people would say that's an excuse, but it's really the only way you could make sense of it, to be honest. But I'll do a separate video, of course. I got those screenshots there from the comments by Skeptical as the quotes from that original article, which is good to see. If I can find the original news article, we can always use that as well. I could possibly even use footage as well where Heavy D talks about the equipment and stuff, and then we apply it to the maps and say, well, if it's that good, why did it not work out then? So there are ideas of videos that can be made. But let's just catch up with these comments for now. Skeptical says, Warlike Raf, you are most definitely the go-to expert on the known details within the Dylan Rounds case. It's like you're the rainbow at the end of the storm. You stuck with the case and waded through all the BS and put up with so much. Good job. So I appreciate that. It's good of you to say, Skeptical, of course. Much appreciated. Good individual. Christy, great video, great map analysis, and as usual, interesting discussions in chat. Well done. Thank you. You're welcome, Christy. Appreciate that. Then June says, was it necessary to put down any searchers? After all, they were out there looking. Now, I don't know if June is questioning me or questioning the family or people in general who criticised volunteers, people going out there searching. What I'll do, June, I'll just give you my thoughts on the matter. I think this June is the same June, but on a different account because they switch and change and have different logins, whatever. It's a bit of a mess, but I kind of get where they're coming from there. I think I might have seen a bit of change in behaviour from June recently with their responses within, what was it, the Kenny Veach case possibly? Nevertheless, let's just focus in on this comment right now. So if June was directing this towards me, why was I putting down any searches? Well, there was reasons behind it, and it's not coming down to putting down them in that sense. It's just putting things into perspective. I mean, at the end of the day, with the Dylan Rounds case, there was a point in time where public volunteers and searchers were welcomed by the family, and then later on they weren't welcome and they were told to take a step back and let the police and whoever get on with it, despite Candice Cooley previously disliking the LE. And it might have felt like a kick in the face to the general public that were encouraged to help, and now suddenly they've been given the cold treatment, silent treatment, and pushed back. People may feel rejected, or at least did at the time. I understand that. But if there was a moment or a point where it felt like there was an investigation underway, a new lead or new evidence found, it probably is best to let the authorities take over because they know how to handle it. But obviously when it comes to the LE Box Elder, they weren't always the sharpest tool in the shed early on because of delays made and not always being organised and maybe at the beginning not taking it too seriously. So I can understand why people would say, well, you know, the general public seems to care more than the LE, so why the family pushing the general public away from searching? It's just probably because the authorities are the authority, have the power, have the further tools, equipment, and when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, when it comes to processing it, the evidence, there's legal implications regarding it. It could be detrimental if general public got involved, found evidence, contaminated it, accidentally broke it. Who knows? Accidents can happen. And within the Dylan Rounds case, and with how scarce it was early on, the slightest of evidence or lead was very sacred within the case. So there are different viewpoints, perspectives to take in consideration. I get it from both sides, why they think and why they feel the way they did at the time. But despite the volunteer searchers, besides the odd searchers that were working alongside the family or Texas EquiSearch, such as Mob Crew Chris, kind of like a volunteer, but a person with experience and the usage of a drone, which was helpful, and in communication with Candice Cooley, the family, up to a certain point, because let's not forget, as time went on, Mob Crew Chris and the family, Dylan Rounds, parted ways, and there weren't really any more communication after that, so things did die down. But at the time, there was communication, and such as in 2022, with the big push before winter time, desperation kicking on in, Dylan Rounds not been found back then, we need to do something soon before winter comes in, because it will slow down everything, and it means the searches are called off. Not much success at the time when you reflect back now, but what was done, and Mob Crew Chris joined in. Now, what other searchers are there? The rogue hikers, the rogue searchers that go out there, do what they can to help the case, and possibly because they care about Dylan, but they may not respect the wishes of the family. But these hikers, these lone individuals or working in small groups and packs, do what they can, which will be seen as a good thing by the general public, and they will be backed by the general public. But the family aren't always too pleased. And that can apply to Lance Kelly, Earthworm Infotainment. That can apply to possibly Scott Natal, although his name, nor Les Natal's name, were ever brought up in negative ways. So that is a positive, to be fair. Scott Natal, Les Natal, I know extensively, despite other people who get defensive and triggered about it, because I was the catalyst. You know, not being rude, but it's a fact. I was a catalyst for Scott Natal being influenced and inspired to do his own YouTube channel and his own videos, such as beginning with the disappearance mystery of Kenny Veach. Scott Natal coming on in, experienced hiker, the same with Les Natal, experienced quite a lot and doing well with the hikes and going into mine shafts. But then because of the Kenny Veach case, my coverage, and because it involved mine shafts exploration, that's what got Scott's attention, came on in. Les Natal, the brother of Scott Natal, came on in as well, interested.
And that's how it all begun. And then with time moving on to Dylan Rounds. So they were able to keep out the drama and conflict, which is good to see. But Lance Kelly, Ty Corbin caught up in drama with time, whilst supposedly searching for Dylan, but still caught up in drama, conflicts, and questionable things like the bag of bones here, bones there, and then boards and planks and stuff being moved about, constantly looking for footprints and tracks, even if it is years later, but saying that that's to do with Dylan Rounds, or it could be. Yeah. See, these are just observations, okay? Some people calling out Lance Kelly for going round in circles and not actually looking properly. Others calling it out for Ty Corbin as well. Then the inner conflict between Ty and Lance earlier on. All unnecessary drama by people that have also been boots on ground. See, at the end of the day, and this is being realistic, okay? When it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, and really any case out there when it comes to missing people, what tends to happen is we call them first-time responders, or more so just the people that go boots on ground and do their investigations, even if they're not a part of the case nor assigned to, they're just volunteers and they go on in. Those type of people always tend to be praised and given some form of high praise as well. Do they deserve to be? In general speaking, you'd argue and say so, because these searchers, these hikers are going out there, out of their way, possibly risking their life, their health, depending where they may be hiking and the terrain and weather. Some of it coming out of their own pocket when it comes to traveling to the different places, maybe paying for camera equipment to record, drones, additional equipment as well, gas, petrol, whatever you want to call it, money to fuel your vehicles to get from point A to point B, coming out of their pocket, then uploading videos online, originally free of charge, and then maybe gaining with time just so they can be supported on their travels and adventures. Nothing wrong with that. So there's a lot that goes into it, and you probably can understand why those people are praised for what they do, because they're possibly making sacrifices, and they're providing content to the general public online, actual boots on ground footage, which is quite important to people within any case or news to see it for yourself firsthand. But to be honest, arguably speaking, I would highlight and say, whilst those type of people are praised, the boots on ground investigators, the people that tend to be underappreciated, undervalued, generally speaking, are the ones who do it digitally online when covering a case. And whilst people can throw it back in people's faces and say, yeah, but when it comes to such as Dylan Rounds, the case, people online, all they did was cause trouble and create BS. Well, yeah, but not everyone, of course. I had it under control. Not my fault if other people didn't. But let's not forget, when it comes to the hikers, the ones that are always praised all the time, some of those people were questioned by skeptical viewers. Some of those people got caught up in drama. Some of those people joined in on it and may have hyped it up or enabled it themselves, and also making ties with darker forces out there and other disruptors in the case. They're no better. So just because a person goes out hiking, boots on ground, they shouldn't be put on a pedestal immediately, right? The general public at time seem to think that hikers and, ones that go boots on ground out there are like God, right? The be all and end all. But there are many different roles and areas within a case, within an activity, a theme, a topic, whatever. Many different roles, different from one another, but they're all equally important, like the gears and cogs within a machine. Without one, it won't function properly, right? So the people that go out there boots on ground, that's important. It can help for the right reasons and when it's needed and necessary, not when the hikers themselves choose it's time to do so, despite and disregarding the wishes of the family or the police. Let's make that clear. Because if you're going against that, which some hikers did in the Dylan Rounds case, you could argue and say that's like a rogue hiker. That is it a competition that they want to be the ones to find it first? Could there be a possible mistake made where they may damage or come across something? Maybe. What you've also got to acknowledge is, if you wanted to say and put the argument across that the hikers that went out there and they were being careful with what they were doing and they weren't really digging anything up. Okay then. Well then how would you expect to ever find Dylan Rounds then? Yeah, you can go out there, you can stand in the middle of a desert, you can kick the odd rock about, and that could be seen as a good thing and you can get praised online. You say that you're searching for Dylan, but are you actually searching for Dylan? Because if the excuse is, well, we don't want to search too much because then it could lead to harming the case, well, then clearly you've acknowledged that you could be a disruptor within the case. So instead, you're doing a half-hearted attempt whilst trying to search, so you appear as good, you gain favour, you seem like you're doing the right thing, but at the end of the day, you're not actually looking for Dylan, because if you did, then it could cause real problems if you did discover something or uncover bones. You get what I'm saying? I'm basing it off footage. A person can go into a mine shaft. Okay, if that's where you believe Dylan could be, fair enough. But how many mine shafts? Well, if there's many out there, you've got to tick them off the list. But what if they've already been searched by an actual group of people, like Candice Cooley said? Why do they need to be checked again? Maybe there's no harm in doing so. But then when you start going into mine shafts and then you're going down small crawl passageways and you're actually exploring the whole mine, the whole bloody shaft, the whole mining community, right? That becomes a bit unrealistic. If you're doing it because you're passionate and you're just interested within the area and you want to include it in your footage, maybe it's outlined clearly that you think Dylan Rounds could have fallen to the bottom of the mine shaft, but then beyond that, it's very unlikely Dylan Rounds would be further in. Because what you got to understand, obviously the mine shaft concept is completely irrelevant now. Dylan Rounds was not found down a mine shaft. Dylan Rounds was never put into a mine shaft, okay? Dylan Rounds was buried in a shallow grave near to the gate, or one of the gates, near to the fence line of the grain shed property on the outer side of it, right? So when you look back now, you think, oh, right? But at the time, you can understand why people would be thinking in other ways. I get that. But then when you had people going down those passageways and tunnels, it's just very unrealistic, because if Dylan Rounds originally, with the mindset of being put into a mine shaft, thrown into one, Brenner wouldn't go out of his way to move Dylan in the mine or the mine shaft. He wouldn't drag Dylan in further. Likely Brenner, the only thing he would have done was rolled Dylan into the vertical mine shaft. So Dylan would have fallen down to the bottom and would have remained there, exactly like animal bones, which are collected at the bottom, where animals have accidentally fallen into a mine shaft. They don't fall in, hit the ground, dead, and then suddenly start crawling away. That doesn't happen. And that wouldn't have happened with Dylan. So when you did see hikers going further into the mine shafts, as good and interesting as it is the footage, it becomes more unrealistic and a little bit dragged out, like people are reaching too far. Does that make sense when you use common sense, right? Now, to refer back to the hikers and the searchers going about looking around, if they're not digging, then what's the point of people being out there? And that's not being rude. If it's presumed, and there is evidence to suggest desecration, like how Brenner was charged with it, well, desecration falls under the term of concealing a body, so likely buried in the ground. So if you've got hikers and searchers going out there, kicking a few rocks about, checking for some footprints and tracks, that's clearly not good enough. Because if you keep doing that, you're never going to find Dylan unless you start actually digging into the ground. And that's where you get to uncharted territory and it becomes a possible problem within the case. And that's why not everyone decided to go down that route. There might have been a few chipping away at the rock wall of a wash, and that was a bit of a stretch there in trying to not cause any trouble or tension, despite what the family may think. But you get what I'm saying? There's a range of different roles and purposes where people can be praised and acknowledged. But if you start putting someone on a pedestal, or there's a bit of a hierarchy, considering the actions of those people, I would say it's a bit overhyped and over-exaggerated. Anyone can walk in a desert, successfully or not. People can be placed in the desert, do a bit of recording and say, I've been searching for someone. And then everyone says, oh, round of applause, hallelujah, good job, blah, blah, blah. But what about the other people that have been out there searching, who may not make a big deal or fuss about it, who actually do search and actually dig and put in extra effort? Some of those people don't get acknowledged or recognised because they don't make a big deal about it online. It's interesting because some of these hikers or the odd person online that may have said, well, I'm not doing it for any other reason or not, whatever, and I was doing it before, then why do you suddenly start doing videos then? And why do people create, at times, poor video titles and thumbnails so it's harder to trace and track as to what you're referring to or going on about? That's why not as many people watch the videos if it's poorly titled and there's not much relevancy to it. Now, this isn't me being mean. This is me being realistic, okay? It's good that people go out there and record footage. That can be very helpful and useful. Not specifically the searches, but just simply tracing back the events as followed. Going to the Grainshed property, going to Dylan Round's farm, whether you're allowed to or not. Few dodgy things there, of course, but just recording it, documenting it, it can put things into perspective. It can complement the online coverage and the digital maps. The one time when it was useful by Ty Corbyn is when he went to Lucerne Pond after it was dredged or dug up again going into 2023. That's one of the good things Ty Corbyn did. But besides that, I couldn't understand why people would support those people by going out there hiking and searching, but they're just simply walking about, looking underneath the odd rock or staring. It's not exactly going to guarantee Dylan being found, right? If you was to go out there with a cadaver dog, you might have more success, and that's like what Lance Kelly was trying to do, but that didn't quite work out because of drama, conflict, moving away, and all kinds of weird stuff going on in the background. Who knows what? The claims made by Ty Corbyn, all kinds of messy stuff. But as we saw in that recent news article, Candice Cooley said that when it comes to the cadaver dogs, if one was brought out there, but it was not in agreement, nor was it acknowledged by the police, and it was just like some kind of stranger that went out there with a cadaver dog, if any items were found by that dog, that evidence would be ruled out of the case. And it could completely screw over the whole case and justice for Dylan. So you can see the implications it could have had. So these volunteers who go out there believing that they're doing good, they may truly believe that they're doing good, but they could indirectly be causing more harm to a case. Kind of like the equivalent of where people may want to open the borders and let as many people in from war-torn countries. You think you're doing a good thing, you're helping people out, but what you're actually doing is creating overpopulation of certain countries, areas and cities, and possible risk of dangers and criminals who are coming as well, leaking on in undetected. So you think you do good at first and later you find out you cause more problems. That's just what happens, okay? So hopefully June, you understand that. It's not about putting down people. It's about bringing people back down to reality, the gravity of it, because some people have put others on a pedestal as if they're God, when really they're not. So let's move on. Apologies if that took longer. We got Paige saying, I don't understand with how the drones and the cadaver dogs, his body wasn't found sooner. They searched this whole area so well. I'm just glad he was finally recovered. So welcome back, Paige. Yeah, I'll do a video questioning that, giving my thoughts on the matter. There's only one possible explanation. It's not good enough, but if you had to try and search for some answers as to why people fell short, there's only really one explanation, and I'll kind of go back over that in another video and also use the quotes by that article which Skeptical got a hold of. All very useful and interesting, of course. It appears that some of those discussions went on longer than anticipated, considering we haven't gotten to the main part of this video yet, but I appreciate people's patience. And to be honest, it's a good thing that the comments were that long and it took time to discuss things. It just shows the activity, the focus, the interest within the Dylan Rounds case. Just goes to show that even though Dylan Rounds had been found previously, there are still some unanswered questions, and in other areas more questions now than ever before, and we can go over it bit by bit. And along the way, whether there be silence, cold patches, maybe with time officially you'll get more news and coverage which then can be looked at, assessed, analysed, compared bit by bit, because there's been progression recently and quite a bit of different parts and pieces of breaking news, which is good to see. And speaking of breaking news and news articles coming out, another one came about just recently. I believe the article was maybe 16 hours ago to 1 day ago, so it's pretty recent and fresh. And then as for the, I think KSL News, they did some kind of coverage on the Dylan Rounds case, which used a bit of Candice Cooley's footage as part of an media interview. We'll look at
Candice Cooley herself first, what she had to say. This is around the theme and topic of what was the motive behind James Brener? What caused him? What made him? What was going through his mind for him to take it out on Dylan Rounds on the 28th of May 2022? Why did James Brener kill Dylan Rounds, at the time a 19-year-old farmer who was somewhat innocent, maybe a little bit vulnerable because of age, hardworking individual? Why would Brenner take someone like that out of this world, out of this life? Well, let's hear from what Candice Cooley has had to say most recently.
While the documents did not detail a motive, Round's mom told KSL it was because Brenner was mad.
Just mad that Dylan put his truck in the shed that day. That's it. Just mad. Just absolutely shameful. I mean, that's what it was over. And that's probably all we'll ever get out of him. I mean, there is no legal arrangement that can make him tell us exactly what happened that morning.
You heard that yourself with what Candice Cooley had said, that it's all because of Dylan parking the grain truck in the grain shed. And to be honest, I do agree with that to an extent, but there's got to be a little bit more to it than what meets the eye, because there are additional factors to take in mind, into consideration, and even previous events from the past, some of which can be acknowledged later on when I give you my slideshow of factors, reasons behind Brenner's motives, and it's actually something I did way back in the past, but it's still somewhat relevant now, okay? So you can let me know your thoughts as to what you think regarding Candice Cooley, what she had to say in that footage. I know you could say, well, what about Justin, what he thinks and what he's got to say? Well, Justin has been radio silent, hasn't been really appearing anywhere. Just a quick question, if Gloria Dillon's around, was Justin round with Candice Cooley when Brenner appeared in court on May 15th, recently, 2024? Or was he nowhere to be seen? You know, when we look back to one of the hearings in the past with Brenner, the last one, not May, but back in 2023, I think it was, or going into 2024, when you had East Idaho News, Nate Eaton interviewing Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds outside the courthouse of Brigham City. Justin appeared there on camera. Why not this time? I wonder why the sudden silence and being absent from interviews and coverage. What's going on? It might not be anything. Maybe one is busy in life and has got responsibilities. I just noticed the change and the absence. I just want to know what you think in the chat. So, we're taking that all into mind. Let's look at this additional news article, a separate one, but it does quote Candice Cooley. The title here reads, "Squatter admits killing Utah farmhand over where he parked the truck." It sounds so basic and so petty that people probably would find it hard to comprehend that someone like Brenner would do something like that to Dylan over a truck being parked somewhere. But to be honest, when you think about it, in real life as well, there have been other situations, maybe more so in the US, where there's been disputes, arguments, falling outs over the smallest of things, and it resorted to shots being fired or someone getting stabbed. So Dylan isn't the only one out there. There have been other people that have been in similar situations over petty stuff. But in the Dylan Rounds case, I think there's a little bit more to it, some additional details which weren't acknowledged in that news article, or more so the news interview with Candice Cooley. It was worded very basic. Candice Cooley did say that with Brenner, probably not going to open up or say anything more. And, you know, with the truck factor, the reasoning behind that might be all we'll ever get out of Brenner and the case. But to be honest, you know, Brenner has already spoken up and, well, maybe not a lot, but he, you know, that plea deal, guiding people, authorities to the location where Dylan Rounds was buried at. That was obviously one of the biggest factors and pieces of evidence in the case, because it's basically pretty much admitting and finalising that Brenner was responsible for the desecration and murder of Dylan. So if Brenner was capable of doing that, then could he be capable of saying more and revealing more information later? Maybe. Or does it come down to Brenner wants something out of it? So the only reason why Brenner decided to show authorities the location of the burial site was through a plea deal in which Brenner gives them something, but Brenner gets something in return, so it benefits him. You could argue and say the only reason how Brenner would open up more and explain the story the day of when he killed Dylan for further details, besides the desecration,
would be along the lines of, I'll talk more if you give me something in return. Maybe that's the only way Brenner works. Unfortunate. And he's like, bribing to take action and explain the situation. But let's just look at what we've got right here. Below the title, Dylan Rounds, 19 at the time, vanished in Utah on Memorial Day weekend 2 years ago after making final phone call to the grandmother on the 28th of May 2022. This is by Amelia Neef. Interesting name, done 1 day ago. Your briefing on the latest headlines from the US. Utah squatter James Brener murdered a teenage farmhand after a disagreement over where he parked his truck before burying his body, a court heard. Right, Dylan's grain truck it's talking about there. James Brener, 61. See, this is what I don't get. Didn't it say 60 or did it say 61? Am I thinking of another article that said he was 62? I can't remember now, but I'm sure the last few articles I read were saying that Brenner's 60 years old. Could be wrong. It's not like a major inaccuracy, but I don't know why it differs from some saying he's 60 to others saying he's 61. It's not even near to his birthday, I don't believe. Anyway, Brenner pleaded guilty to the murder of Dylan Rounds on Wednesday at a court appearance. Brigham City, 15th of May 2024. Dylan Rounds, 19 at the time, vanished Memorial Day weekend, 28th of May 2022, which is 2 years ago. Before his disappearance, the teenager had made a final phone call to his grandmother, Karen Rounds, and was never seen or heard from again after. That final phone call was near to the gate to the Grainshed property, as if you were heading north to the Grainshed property, and that call was made roughly around 6:51 a.m. Then 6:58 a.m. Dylan attempted to call Brenner. That was unsuccessful. There are possibilities that if Brenner did pick up that phone call from Dylan, maybe Dylan's life could still be alive till this day, if Brenner was aware of what Dylan was going to do and there was warning given and notice, but Brenner didn't answer, which is unfortunate. Brenner had been squatting in a trailer on land next to where the victim lived. That's incorrect. And it says according to investigators, that's incorrect. Brenner was at the Grainshed property 5 miles away from where Dylan Rounds' farm was. And if you're talking about the farm where the victim lived, Dylan Rounds did not live at the farm, nor did he live at the Grainshed property. Dylan Rounds spent a very short amount of time on site in the area, such as at his farm, when there was farm work needed, maybe a couple of days with, but most of the time Dylan Rounds was on the move, on the go, going to other places, Montello, Nevada, Idaho, etc., or Idaho, however you say it, right? Different locations, Dylan Rounds moving about, custom farm work for other farmers, helping them out, doing chores, getting money so then he could put it into his own farm work. Dylan also visiting family, Justin Rounds, Candice Cooley, individually at times, grandparents visiting them, etc. So this article has already got it wrong, which is very terrible considering it's this late on in the case. That's why I'm cleaning up as we go along. Now, it says, a video eventually found on the victim's phone. That was through a deep forensic dive by the LE Police Forensics. A forensic dive done, and that was found, that footage, time-lapse footage, in November of 2022. We, the people, and the family heard about it in 2023, around March, when Brenner was charged with the aggravated murder, originally, and the desecration. However, in recent times, some of those charges have either been reduced or dropped, literally, because of the plea deal with Brenner, as we saw in the details. So with the original aggravated murder of Dylan Rounds, that's been dropped to second-degree murder, which Brenner pled guilty to, and that serves 1 to 15 years max, years spent in prison, compared to the other option, I believe the aggravated one, being 25 years or so, and maybe onwards. So it is disappointing that, but it's a part of the plea deal, which not everyone agrees with, and the family aren't too pleased, such as Candice Cooley. And amongst the plea deal details, it also revealed that the desecration, so, concealing, disposing of Dylan Rounds' body, that charge on Brenner, who is clearly responsible for burying Dylan, that charge has been dropped completely, which is very disappointing to see, but it is a part of the plea deal, unfortunately. It's not good though. Nevertheless, This article so far is kind of lacking in detail, right? Yeah, it goes on about the time-lapse footage. They're not even calling it time-lapse, they're just calling it a video from Dylan's phone, showed blood-splattered Brenner cleaning a gun. That sounds a little bit exaggerated. They never really called it blood splattered. They just basically said, and it was also from Justin Rounds, the father of Dylan, that actually saw the footage himself firsthand, basically saying Brenner in his own trailer with Dylan's phone, somehow the phone pointing to Brenner, somehow, maybe because the phone fell on the side, rested against a chair, who knows what's in Brenner's trailer at the time. Brenner cleaning a firearm with blood on his hands, his sleeves arm, his shirt, and that shirt was later found by authorities, and it linked to Dylan's DNA. Right. What else do we have here? Brenner appeared in court on 3 pending cases, including aggravated murder charged with the death of Rounds, Dylan. According to a statement from the Box Elder County's Attorney Office, he entered guilty pleas to resolve all 3 cases. Well, regarding aggravated murder, that was reduced down to second-degree murder. I don't know if that will be mentioned later on in this article, but we'll have a look. Candice Cooley, the victim's mother, told KSL that the family was told Brenner had been mad that Dylan put his truck in the shed that day. Is that so? I mean, do we have enough to go off from that? Candice Cooley was told, or, well, on here it says told KSL that the family was told Brenner had been mad for Dylan Rounds on the day parking his grain truck at the grain shed property on the 28th. It's very vague that it shouldn't be enough to warrant a response from Brenner in that sense, but if Brenner is easily triggered and he was moody and he wasn't too pleased with Dylan at that time, then maybe he would snap, but sure, there would have to be an additional factor as well for Brenner to react, unless, because I've not seen Brenner when angry, it's hard to understand from that point of view. Unless people, locals, have seen Brenner get angry over the smallest of things, then it would make more sense as to why Brenner lost it here and took it out on Dylan. But with this time round, shooting Dylan twice in the head, definitely intentional. Whereas in the past, if Brenner took it out on someone, it didn't lead to death. So there was an intent to hurt someone, to teach them a lesson, but not necessarily to kill them. But on this occasion, there was a form of killing, of course, so one of the more extreme cases from Brenner, right? Let me know if you agree. But when it says that the family was told Brenner had been mad, who told the family that Brenner had been mad, right? The only thing I can remember or think of is when Justin Rounds was retelling the story of when they got down there, the parents, I believe on the 30th of May 2022, when Justin was speaking with James Brener at the time, obviously unaware that James Brener was the killer, having that conversation, and Justin months or whatever year later recounted that event, said how James Brener was so cool and calm, didn't show much emotion, just simply said that on the day came across Dylan parking the grain truck in the grain shed and ended up breaking the horse gate, which I guess is within the shed, the grain shed, of when Dylan was reversing in. And I can't remember if Brenner said he was a bit mad, a bit angry because of that. And that was about it. Maybe if that's the case, and that's what Candice Cooley, the family, are talking about here, where they said they were told that Brenner was mad for Dylan parking the truck in the grain shed. But to say that they were told that Brenner was mad, not they were told from Brenner that he was mad at the time. There's a difference, isn't there? So it's weird how it's been worded here, because how else did the family find out the motive for Brenner's actions, right? Because you had to basically piece it together originally, so what's changed since? Okay, we could have highlighted in the past that, yeah, Brenner possibly angry because of Dylan on site early in the morning. Brenner wasn't anticipating it. If Dylan accidentally broke anything, that could have triggered Brenner as well, or leaving the gate open could have triggered Brenner. There's a lot of possibilities, but it wasn't reinforced enough Still, we've not heard directly from Brenner his motives or reasoning. Will we ever? Don't know. And Candice Cooley kind of highlighted that in that news interview just before. But for them to say that we pretty much know what happened, who told you though? Besides Brenner himself possibly being angry for Dylan accidentally breaking a horse gate at the Grangeshed property, how else were you told? Who else told you the motive behind Brenner's actions on that day? Because surely Brenner was the only one on site at the time besides Dylan to do what he did, and for whatever reason. So how would anyone else really know? The only way you'll ever know the motive behind the killing is Brenner himself. So that's what I'm interested in, right? Anyway, let's just continue reading. Nevertheless, Mrs. Cooley added that Brenner's guilty plea over the murder has been given some sort of solace. We can take a deep breath now. We don't have to wonder what the next phone call is going to be, she added. Prosecutors have been working closely with the parents of the teenager to review different options, sentencing outcomes. Yeah, we've seen that part of the plea agreement. Yeah, he was only charged with second-degree felony murder rather than first-degree aggravated. So we've seen that. Skeletal remains had not been seen since 2022 were found remote arid loose in Utah. Well, it's not exactly as remote as you would think. It's near to the Grangeshed property on the outer side of it, near the fence line and near one of the gates, like what you see in one of my previous videos. FBI assisted, we've seen all that. Thank everyone for the love and support. A second charge for the desecration of human remains was also dismissed. We've seen that as well. Guilty, murder plea. Guilty to 2 counts of possession of firearms, unrelated to Dylan. The final requirement, yeah, we've seen that. July 1st, the sentencing. We've definitely been waiting for it, right? It's a giant elephant out of the room. It's definitely a relief in that sense, Candice Cooley said. Both the defence and prosecution agreed to recommend a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 30 years in prison at sentencing. Should it be life, though? Complete life? While Mrs. Cooley stated at the outlet more than likely Brenner will die in prison, she said that the way the law works has left them accepting that her son's murderer will be serving under reduced charges as part of his plea deal. Unfortunate. It shouldn't even be an option, it should be 25 to life. But the justice system forced us into a type of plea, so they weren't too satisfied. Yeah, we've seen all that. Yeah, we've seen all this before. Okay. DNA analysis, boots confirmed to belong to Brown, Brenner's DNA found on it, and blood as well of Dylan. Authorities then tracked down victim's phone. Yeah, Lucent Pond. A digital forensic download, discovered the time-lapse video. Right, so it's mentioning it more now, that's good. The shirt as well with the DNA. Yeah. Right, that's all good. Interesting, it says Brenner described by court documents obtained as a family friend of Rounds. Are you talking about Dylan Rounds, maybe? But Candice Cooley quickly dismissed Brenner being a family friend. Definitely not. So that's interesting. Weird how it's brought up again. And then that non-profit. Okay, for those who may have felt that it was a very underwhelming description given by Candice Cooley from what the parents have been told from whoever else out there at whatever point in time regarding the motives to Brenner killing Dylan, on screen, here are some factors to possibly take in mind which could explain there's a slightly deeper reason behind why Brenner did what he did. At that moment, heat of the moment, not planned out before, but in that moment, intent to kill, seeing red, rage, snapping is quite possible, but what if there was some factors in the background which sent him over the edge, or it was boiling away within like a dormant volcano? Add in the catalyst, which is the turning point within it all, which then triggers Brenner's final reaction and his energy built up within. You know, there's a possibility like that. Now, some of you will be familiar by this because I did do a video in the past, but unfortunately it was heavily underwhelming in terms of reach. Not everybody got the opportunity in seeing it, which is very unfortunate. But just now, this video that I did was quite some time ago, so maybe I was ahead of my time, possibly, but it was just putting into play in perspective from the stuff we heard, the red flags, the early warning signs in the past, and these are some of the factors. So number one, Brenner's anger, his snapping being an issue, right? At any point, if Brenner feels frustrated, pressed, cornered like an animal, or he doesn't like the way he's being spoken to, any different type of interaction, action, or event he's involved with,
if he takes it the wrong way, because we've known and heard he's got anger issues and he can snap, and he has done in the past, and takes it out on others directly or indirectly, channeling his rage through the form of displacement, whether that be some kind of defense mechanisms within his mind. He's a defensive individual, very protective of certain things or people, and snapping, well, that's one of the factors we've got to take in mind. Brenner has done it in the past. Brenner has reoffended, and it's through anger. Through his aggression, rage and anger leads to destruction, damage, and people's lives being ruined, harmed, and injured, as we've already seen through his court documents in the past and charges. So the same with Dylan Rounds this time, if not worse, because this was pure murder and led to Dylan dying. So there's that to take in mind. But when you've got anger issues, there still has to be an action or reaction from someone or an event for Brenner's anger to boil over. So what happens in between? Is there any triggers? Well, we'll get to that shortly. As for the possible long-standing grudge, Brenner, long-standing jealousy of Dylan Rounds. How do we know that? Because of Brenner's attitude towards Dylan, it was hardly positive. And how do we really know that? Well, because Justin Rounds, back in 2021, maybe winter time, when Don Hatley, James Brener, and Dylan were at Justin Rounds' shop with a vehicle. Was it the grain truck? Possibly. And I guess work was being done on it. Dylan Rounds was on site, but elsewhere. Justin Rounds was in a different room. And Brenner and Don Hatley, friends, were together near to the truck, talking, having a conversation about Dylan Rounds. More so, it was Brenner doing the talking, criticising and having a go at Dylan. Justin Rounds saw it and heard it through the CCTV surveillance and the audio that was captured during the conversation when Justin was in a different room. So likely, because people were out the way, Brenner felt like he was all alone, so he could share his thoughts with Don, what he truly thought about Dylan, and it was negative, and it was criticising Dylan for what Dylan supposedly had, how he handled his equipment, and how reckless he was. It was a form of jealousy, basically, because possibly Brenner didn't have what Dylan had at that same age back then. So Brenner missed out and doesn't like the idea of Dylan being able to have those opportunities, which Brenner didn't have back then, and Dylan is supposedly a bit reckless with it. It annoys Brenner for whatever reason, and a form of jealousy plays that role there. So we've got an example there. Justin Rounds saw it himself firsthand. Justin Rounds highlighted that Brenner was jealous of Dylan Rounds. So if that dates back to around 2021 winter time, maybe a bit before that, and you build it up to 2022, that's a couple of years of jealousy building, a long-term grudge and a form of hatred towards Dylan. Okay, so maybe at any point that could have been a factor. If Dylan Rounds complained about his life, or if Dylan Rounds complained or was reckless with equipment, if Brenner was around on that day and heard it, that would be probably enough to trigger Brenner, because Brenner could be like, excuse me, Dylan, you know, you're a lot better off in life than I was at your age back then. You've got a lot more than what I had back then. How dare you complain about life when we had it harder? You know, that type of conversation. But because Brenner takes it more personally and maybe more emotionally driven and has anger issues, it'd probably be enough to boil him over the edge and say, you know what, Dylan, I'm going to take I'm going to take things away from you, so then you're in a position as like what I'm in, but taking it too far. Does that make sense to anyone? Hopefully it does. If it doesn't, the actual trigger itself, 28th of May 2022, as described by Brenner when Justin Rounds was listening in on site, 30th of May when hearing about it, that the horse gate was damaged by Dylan Rounds when reversing the grain truck in the grain shed. That's what annoyed Brenner. But obviously at the time when Brenner talking to Justin Rounds, the father, Brenner didn't say, well, because of that, that's why I killed your son. He didn't say that. He just simply brought up about Dylan breaking the horse gate. So as we know, Brenner can get easily triggered and angered. If Dylan Rounds is on site, if Dylan Rounds is a little bit reckless because he's in a rush and it causes damage, of course Dylan would probably pay for it or apologise if he had the chance, but obviously Brenner was having none of it. And if all that truly happened, because we have seen in the grain shed property there is a horse gate and it does look damaged,
and it's within the Grangeshed property, so it could link there, that on that day, if it did happen, that would be the trigger. The trigger of damage to some property, damage which Brenner put there. Well, he didn't put the damage there, but he put stuff there which was then damaged. And if it was to do with the horse, and Brenner being protected of the horse, and with what has happened in the past, I can understand why Brenner would lose it. Not that it's the right thing to do, that Brenner has taken it over the top and almost literally overkill, but still, based off Brenner's patterns of behaviour, it's no surprise, right? There is a trigger, which then triggers Brenner's anger, which then leads to him snapping and then taking it out on Dylan directly or indirectly. And I think in this case, it was directly because it was driven by a long-standing form of jealousy from the past in the name of Dylan and what Dylan had and his farming standards, which was a long-term grudge in the eyes of Brenner. So Brenner already had issues with Dylan Rounds in the background. But what Brenner needed, well, maybe he didn't need it, maybe he didn't want it, but what happened with Brenner was on that day, the 28th, there was a trigger, which then activated his anger, and we've already been pissed off with Dylan in the past, took it out on Dylan, and finally put an end to it, literally. That's one way of looking at it. There are additional factors, protectiveness, for example, his horse, Becky. I'm not saying that Becky is a horse, no, two different things. The horse being Briscoe, Becky being a girlfriend from the past. But I think at some point that Brenner was a little bit too protective of Becky and pointing guns in directions of people. Or if at some point he was threatening towards his girlfriend at some point. All kinds of things. For further detail and clarification, there are documents which are covered on my channel regarding Brenner's past. But what I'm getting at is if there's a form of protectiveness, if Brenner cares about something, if it's ever put in harm's way, if anyone out there, a stranger or not, gets in the way that could be seen as a threat towards something Brenner loves, Brenner will probably take action, whether that be a person or more so his horse. How would we even know? Well, with the girlfriend, I've highlighted that possible thing with the charges in the past regarding to the court documents, but more so with the horse. It was told as a story, a true one, that in the past, a person left the gate open to the Grangeshed property, which then led to Brenner's horse, Briscoe, escaping and roaming about on the land, going all over the place. Brenner was angry and also panicked because of the horse being out in the open. Brenner was really angry, right? So, the equivalent of that, Dylan Rounds, maybe not leaving a gate open, but literally breaking a gate somewhere for Brenner's horse, for example, Grangeshed property, whether the horse was in there or not, that's probably more than enough to anger Brenner. Oh, here we go again, in the eyes of Brenner. Yeah, if he's already got very angry in the past, well, it's happened again. It might just so happen that in the past, whoever left the gate open accidentally to let the horse out, that person didn't return back or wasn't around to see Brenner lose it. So that's why Brenner didn't kill that person back then. But because on this instant, this occasion, 28th of May, when Dylan Rounds may have broken something, for example, and was still on site when Brenner came around and saw it himself, Dylan really had nowhere to go or escape. That's just possibility, right? So Brenner's protectiveness, if anything happens to something he loves or cares about, that would be the trigger, which then leads to his original anger issues. The origins of it all, the biggest issues with Brenner is his anger issues, how he responds to criticism, how he responds to negative events and resistance. You know, it's irrational and it's over the top. If he wasn't angry, he didn't have snapping issues, then it wouldn't lead to death, likely. Okay. Look at when in the past, years ago, was it 2020 or before that, when Dylan Rounds and Brenner got some pigs or something and had them stationed opposite, was it Justin's parents' house or grandparents' house, and Justin didn't agree with that and wasn't pleased with it, had a go at Brenner or just spoke to Brenner. Brenner didn't like the way he was spoken to by Justin. And whilst Dylan Rounds, the son and Dylan's father, Justin Rounds, Dylan was around Brenner when Brenner basically threatened to kill Dylan Rounds' father, Justin Rounds. And then Dylan made a call to Justin and told him what Brenner said. Justin wasn't too fazed by it. supposedly Larry Rounds, the grandfather of Dylan, came in and resolved it all. But nevertheless, that was a big, massive, early red flag warning sign, which the future could have been avoided. You know, if you've already been threatened, death threats, you take that serious. If the father's received the death threats and you know that your son is around that person issuing them out, is that a good person you want to be around? Is that a good role model? Absolutely not. But no action taken. So that was a massive red flag missed out on. Not really brought up enough. So yeah, that's a problem. Now, other factors: ageism, younger people, hatred. He doesn't like the power dynamics that Dylan Rounds, the age he is able to have more than what Brenner did, and that Dylan Rounds can order people about to do work because people work for Dylan. So like Don Hartley and Brenner working for Dylan at a point in time. Brenner didn't like that power dynamic. It should have been the other way around. The older, more experienced person is in charge, and then the younger farm handlers like Dylan should be lower down on the hierarchical list. But you know, it doesn't always work like that in life. So when it doesn't work like that, then people find it hard to comprehend. How can such a young person with less experience be in more power and control than a much older individual with more experience? Right? So maybe Brenner didn't like that, so that was another form of jealousy, right? Hatred. Alcoholic, possibly, drinking beer, cans, as we've seen in the footage of the grain shed and near the dirt mound, things being dumped about. How much alcohol did he have? Can't quite tell, not quite sure, but he probably would have had enough to be drunk at times at least. Okay, maybe unhealthy lifestyle, but it is what it is. No longer on alcohol anymore, and he's probably doing better now for health. Even now, he's a bad individual and he's locked up, but better health now than when he was a free walking man, to be honest. But that alcohol could act as fuel. If for whatever reason Brenner was drunk on the 28th of May or recovering from a hangover, he could have been in a mood. If he was drunk, sometimes alcoholics, sometimes people who are drunk can become very aggressive and nasty and hurt people. Not always, but it can definitely happen, and it has happened, and it will happen, and it will continue to do so. People like to go on the campaigns of banning drugs left, right and centre, but oh no, alcohol's perfectly fine. Very picky and choosy. If you're going to ban this, you might as well ban that. Go all in if you're going to be that strict, but people aren't because they're hypocrites. But nevertheless, alcohol could have acted as a fuel to the fire, on top of Brenner's aggressiveness, and then a factor in the background as a form of snapping, a trigger point. Then on top of that, the long-standing hatred or jealousy, which was further fuel to the fire. Do you see what I mean? Different points. Now, what was the other factor? Growing up environment. So depending what environment Brenner was in the past when he was younger, was he around negative household? Was he around a lot of violence, aggression, bad things going on or not? Did that shape his reality, his mindset for the future? We don't know enough about that when it comes to Brenner's personal life and from the past, but if you used to look into it, maybe it could reveal something. But we've never had an answer yet. So what I just presented there isn't guaranteed and the be-all and end-all for the motives of Brenner, but it puts into perspective the additional possibilities and the backstory behind how things could have played out and what was going on in Brenner's mind at the time and before that. Not saying that it was like premeditated, because obviously with the charges it's not premeditated, but there could still have been a form of hatred or frustration with Dylan before that, right? There might come a day where now you've had enough of that person, so now on this day you decide to take the person out in the moment. Not hours before, not days before, but in the moment you think, screw this, I'm doing it, it's happening, I've had enough. That's not planned, it's not premeditated, it's just on the spot. It can be a snap, but you can still have frustration before that, days before, years before, still a level of unease with that individual, a form of hatred in a way. You can hate someone but not enough to kill them, but then comes a breaking point in the moment where you do kill them, but it's not one entire timeline how it all links together for it to be premeditated. No. I hope that makes sense to people. Just wanted to add in this like extra bit of news and previous news coverage by me, merge it together. Personally, I think that news article, what we read, and more so the interview by Candice Cooley to simply say that Brenner was mad at Dylan for parking grain truck in shed sounds very basic, very petty. There's got to be a little bit more to it. And that bit more to it is something we may never get out of Brenner unless
there's some kind of negotiating. If Brenner was willing enough to reveal the location of where Dylan Rounds was buried at by the hands of Brenner through that plea deal, what will it take, what will it require for Brenner to then speak up later about why he did what he did to Dylan and the methods, the ways, besides the shooting, how things exactly played out on that day and maybe on the 29th? Will Brenner be ever willing to talk about it, or can he not be bothered? Part of me thinks he can't be bothered. He's done the hard work. Well, at least in his mind, he's done the hard work. He's done the most important part. He could be like, well, what more do you want from me? Why do you want more? What do I get out of this? That's probably going through Brenner's mind. We'll see what happens with time, and I'll see what the next video that needs to be made and what it's about, whether it be about Dylan Rounds or another topic. But hopefully you found this video interesting. Be sure to like and share it so more people see it. If you have joined late, rewind this video from the start so you understand it from start to finish. And if any of you want to catch up on my recent videos, top right corner of the screen, click on that I symbol and you'll be able to find the important stuff there, such as the location of Dylan's burial site being found and revealed on maps. Be sure to check that out, and some other bits and bobs along the way. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night for now.